Hello, my friends. Welcome to Luna English Podcast. This is Luna. Today, I've been thinking about something very simple, but very powerful. I've been thinking about how real change begins the moment you finally move. Not when you dream about moving, not when you wait for motivation, and not when you hope for the perfect day. It begins when you actually take a small, real step. Many people feel stuck because they stay inside the same comfortable routine. They want to improve their life, their habits, or their English, but they keep waiting for a better mood or a better moment. I want to talk about this today because this idea is true for everything. When you move, even a little, your mind wakes up. You feel more alive, you feel more in control, and you start to understand that progress isn't a mystery. Progress is a choice. In this episode, I want to help you see how powerful your small actions are. I want to show you how 5 minutes of honest effort can change the direction of your life. And I want to guide you through the idea that you don't need to feel ready. You only need to begin. Why do we stay stuck even when we want to grow? We stay stuck because comfort feels safe, even when it's limiting us. It's easy to repeat the same habits, the same thoughts, the same days, because they feel familiar. But familiar doesn't mean helpful. When you want to learn something new, improve your life, or change your direction, your mind often tries to pull you back to what feels easy. This happens because change is uncomfortable. Even good change asks for energy, focus, and courage. Many people wait for clarity or motivation before they start, but waiting only builds more fear. Waiting makes the change feel bigger and heavier. The truth is that you don't need a perfect plan to move forward. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to feel confident. You only need to take one honest step. When you take that step, your mind sees something new. It sees proof that you can move. And this small proof breaks the feeling of being stuck. Stuck is not a permanent state. It's only the result of staying still for too long. What makes change feel so scary? Change feels scary because your mind tries to protect you from anything unknown. When you start something new, even something simple like 5 minutes of English practice, your mind whispers that you might fail, or you might not do it perfectly, or you might not be ready. These thoughts aren't the truth. They're just reactions. Your mind is trying to keep you comfortable, but comfort can become a small box that you never leave. When you feel fear, it doesn't mean you shouldn't move. It simply means you're standing at the edge of something new. And new things always feel a little uncomfortable at first. The good news is that fear becomes smaller the moment you take action. When you show yourself that you can handle the first step, the second step becomes easier. And soon, the thing that once felt scary begins to feel normal. Change is not about being fearless. It's about being honest. It's about saying, I want something better, and I'm willing to be uncomfortable for a moment to build a life that feels meaningful. How do small actions create big growth? They do it by building a pattern, a quiet rhythm that slowly changes who you are. When you take even 5 minutes each day to practice English, move your body, read something, or work toward a goal, you're teaching your mind a new identity. You're telling yourself, I'm someone who shows up. Many people think they need long, perfect sessions to improve. But real progress grows from consistency, not intensity. A short practice done every day is far more powerful than a long practice done once in a while. Small actions build trust inside you. They show you that you can follow through. They help you see that effort isn't something dramatic. It's simply a gentle part of your day. When you repeat a small action over and over, it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your life. This is how big change appears. Not from one large moment, but from many small choices that slowly shape who you become. Why should you stop waiting for motivation? Because motivation isn't a reliable friend. It comes and goes. It rises and fades. If you depend on motivation, You'll start only when you feel excited, and you'll stop the moment you feel tired or unsure. The truth is that motivation grows from action, not the other way around. When you take a small step, you feel a little progress, and that progress creates more energy, more hope, and more motivation. But if you wait for the perfect feeling before you begin, you may wait for a long time. Many people believe they need a strong emotional push to start learning English or making a life change. But all you need is a little courage to start when it feels ordinary. The small actions you take on normal days are the ones that build your future. When you teach yourself that movement can happen without motivation, you become stronger, you become more consistent, and you start living with more freedom because your progress no longer depends on your mood. What happens when you show up imperfectly? Something amazing. You begin to make real progress. Many people wait until they feel confident or prepared, but trying to be perfect only stops them from moving. When you allow yourself to practice English with mistakes or start a goal without knowing everything, you're giving yourself permission to grow. Mistakes aren't signs of failure, they're signs of learning. When you show up imperfectly, you're choosing honesty over fear. You're saying, I know I'm not perfect, but I'm here. And that choice is more powerful than any perfect plan. Imperfect effort teaches you something that perfection can't. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you patience. It teaches you that progress is not about doing everything right. It's about continuing even when things feel messy or slow. This is the kind of effort that builds confidence over time. This is the kind of effort that keeps you moving forward, one day at a time. Why is 5 minutes enough to start? Because 5 minutes removes the pressure. When you tell yourself you only need 5 minutes, your mind relaxes. The task feels small, simple, and possible. And once you begin, you often continue longer without even thinking about it. 5 minutes helps you break the barrier between thinking and doing. It takes you from intention to action. And action is where the real change begins. Many people wait for big blocks of time, but big blocks rarely appear in everyday life. Small pockets of time are everywhere. 5 minutes after you wake up, 5 minutes before bed, 5 minutes during a break. When you decide that 5 minutes is enough, you become someone who can grow in small spaces. You stop saying I'll start later, and you begin saying I'll start now. 5 minutes can change your direction. 5 minutes can build consistency. And 5 minutes can give you the confidence to take the next step tomorrow. How does honesty help you grow? Honesty shows you the real reasons you stay stuck. When you look at your habits with gentle honesty, you can see what helps you and what holds you back. You can see when you're avoiding something. You can see when you're waiting for perfect conditions. You can see when fear is speaking louder than your goals. Honesty doesn't mean judging yourself. It means seeing yourself clearly, with kindness. When you tell yourself the truth, you give yourself power. You understand what you need to change. You understand what choices actually matter. And you understand that you don't need dramatic steps. You need simple, consistent action. Honest reflection helps you see how much time you've spent waiting, and it helps you decide that waiting is no longer the answer. The moment you become honest with yourself is the moment you can truly move forward. Why does movement create confidence? Because confidence grows from evidence. When you take action, you show yourself that you're capable. You give your mind proof that you can learn, you can improve, and you can keep going. Confidence isn't something you get before you start. It's something you build while you move. Every small action, every short practice, every honest step tells your mind, I can do this. When you stay still, your fears grow. But when you move, your fears shrink. Confidence comes from showing up on the days when you don't feel strong or motivated. It comes from trying again after a slow moment. It comes from choosing progress over comfort. When you move, you're not only changing your habits, you're changing your identity. You're becoming someone who trusts themselves, someone who believes in their own effort. And this kind of confidence stays with you. How do you break old routines? You break them by interrupting them with small, new actions. Old routines feel strong because you repeat them without thinking. When you add a short practice, a small walk, a few minutes of English learning, or a moment of reflection, you interrupt that automatic pattern. You show your mind a different direction. The key is to start small enough that it doesn't feel overwhelming. If your old routine is checking your phone in the morning, try spending your first 5 minutes on something that helps you grow. If your old routine is avoiding practice, try a simple task you can finish quickly. When you repeat these new actions, your brain slowly rewires itself. Old routines lose their power. New routines become familiar. And the more familiar they become, the easier they feel. Breaking old routines is not about force. It's about gentle, steady repetition. That's how change becomes real. Why is consistency more important than intensity? Because consistency builds habits, and habits build your life. Intensity feels exciting, but it doesn't last. It drains your energy. It makes you feel tired. It often leads to burnout. But small, steady actions create a long-term rhythm that's easy to maintain. When you practice English for a short time every day, your brain stays connected to the language. When you work on a goal with gentle, daily effort, your mind stays focused. You don't lose momentum. You don't lose direction. Consistency creates trust inside you. It teaches you that progress doesn't require big, dramatic moments. It only requires showing up. And when you show up again and again, the results become deeper and more natural. You become someone who moves quietly but steadily toward your goals. This quiet consistency is what transforms your life. What happens when you stop waiting for perfect timing? You finally take control of your life. Perfect timing is an illusion. It's something we create in our minds to avoid discomfort. But real growth happens in normal moments, on normal days, when you choose to begin even though everything isn't perfect. When you stop waiting, you realize that small progress today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. You realize that you can practice even when you're tired, even when you're busy, even when your mood isn't great, and you realize that nothing changes until you decide to move. Perfect timing doesn't create progress. Your choices create progress. When you start now, you give yourself a chance to grow. You give yourself a chance to build momentum. And you give yourself a chance to become the person you want to be. How do you keep going when it feels hard? You keep going by returning to your reasons. When things feel slow or heavy, remind yourself why this goal matters to you. Remind yourself how you'll feel when you grow. Remind yourself that every step counts, even the small ones. Hard moments don't mean you're failing, they simply mean you're human. And being human means you'll have ups and downs. What matters is that you continue. Slow progress is still progress. When something feels difficult, take a deep breath and reduce the task. Do it for a shorter time. Do it with less pressure. Do it gently. The important thing is to stay connected to your goal. When you keep going during hard moments, you build real strength. You show yourself that you don't need perfect energy to move forward. You only need commitment. Why is courage more useful than confidence? Because courage is something you can use right now. Confidence comes later, after experience. But courage is what helps you begin. Courage is the quiet voice inside you that says, "I don't feel ready, but I'm willing to try." Courage helps you make the first move. Courage helps you practice when you feel shy. Courage helps you keep going when you're uncertain. Confidence grows from these small acts of courage. Many people wait to feel confident before they start learning English or changing their habits. But if you wait for confidence, you may never begin. Courage is the bridge between who you are now and who you want to become. When you choose courage, even for a few minutes, you open the door to change. And once you walk through that door, confidence slowly follows. What truly begins the moment you take one step? The life you've been imagining. Real change doesn't happen in one big moment. It begins quietly with a small decision to move. When you take even 5 minutes to practice, reflect, or grow, you send a message to yourself. You say, I'm ready to change my direction. You say, I'm choosing progress over comfort. You say, I'm building a life that feels meaningful. Every goal, every skill, every transformation comes from this simple beginning. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to move. And once you move, everything slowly becomes easier. The feeling of being stuck fades. The fear of failure gets quieter. The path forward becomes clearer. Your future self is built from the choices you make today. And today, you can choose one small, honest step. That step is enough. That step is powerful. That step is the beginning of your new life.